The searing temperatures day in, day out, and the lack of rain for the past several months have, unsurprisingly, created a situation where the island is now in a full-blown drought. And the National Water Commission says it will now have to manage the delivery of water to its residential and business customers to ensure that we have enough of the commodity to carry us through until the rains come again. We are talking about the issue of drought and what the authorities are doing to manage the situation, even as the government commits millions of dollars upfront to help with drought mitigation measures. It's lead story. Don't want to say the drought edition because that doesn't quite ring right, but we're talking about drought here. Let's start the show. Welcome to Lead Story here on CVM TV on this Thursday. So water, not enough of it. So the NWC has taken action. The government announcing a $350 million allocation to deal with drought mitigation measures, as you'll hear in this report.
These are dry times in Jamaica, a parchness that could outlive the summer months, so says Principal Director of the Meteorological Office, Evan Thompson.
So here we see in the period that we are currently in, going until next week, we are expecting lots of dryness, mainly over the southern part of the island. And you see that large area of reds and browns that is south of the island, but somewhat impacting on the island of Jamaica. And that's what we are expecting over the next few days, but then we are expecting the browns to continue in terms of the dryness continuing over sections of the island going through much of July. Here we have it even going into August, where we have those drier conditions that are expected to be impacting our island. Some of that could change in the longer term, but of course we're looking at the immediate future and we're seeing that there's a lot of dryness to be expected over the island.
And the forecast isn't looking much different over the next 3 to 6 months. But Thompson assures there'll be more rain closer to the end of the year.
First 3 months, although that's in the picture to the north, to the top, sorry, this is not north in this case, but the top of our image shows us that more of the wetness should be expected toward the western half of the island. But the eastern half could still continue to experience some amount of dryness, and this is for the period July, August, and September. As we move to the lower image, with October going through December, that's when we do expect to see a change. As you know, traditionally, we would have an increase in wetness or rainfall as we go through October, one of our primary rainfall season that prepares us for going into the next dry season. So we are expecting that we will have some amount of rainfall, that it will change the picture somewhat, but that is as we go toward the end of 2025.
Acting President of the National Water Commission, Garth Jackson, says already more than 40 of the 400-plus systems have been hit, showing below accepted levels mainly in eastern parishes. He also painted a picture for Kingston and St. Andrew.
The Hermitage Dam, we are currently, these are actually yesterday's numbers, 246 million gallons of storage. Capacity is actually just under 400 million gallons. And so we're at about 62%. The levels are falling about 1% per day. And so our usual caution level will start to have to deal with consider restrictions or consider contingency measures. It's about 65%, so we're just about there now, and we're actually in the process of dealing with those.
The Mona Dam levels, though lower inflows, he says, shows high storage levels, but that is rapidly falling by about 1% daily too. The NWC says in the short term, several wells once decommissioned have been returned to operation to increase flows to urban centers while reducing non-revenue loss. And despite this dim picture of dryness, the water minister insists Jamaica is in a better position to tackle the dry spell now than it was 9 years ago. The government also pumped millions into keeping water in the worst affected communities.
I'm announcing this morning a suite of measures for drought mitigation efforts from your government of 350 million Jamaican dollars. Those measures will include $250 million, which will be executed by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, which will see trucking, something I hate to discuss, but trucking that will be directed through members of parliament to the tune of approximately $150 million. It will see further trucking support to the National Water Commission of approximately $50 million to service critical infrastructure and $50 million towards additional tank purchases.
Minister Samuda says there's also a $100 million agriculture relief.
Matthew Samuda there, the Minister in charge of water and climate change. More on lead story after the break. On the other side, I speak to two gentlemen who will have big roles to play as we navigate this dry spell.
Challenges are everywhere and things are constantly changing, but independent living remains the same. Rising above physical challenges, we can help you do it. For years, we have been Jamaica's trusted provider for solutions to improve patient care, safety, and general quality of life. No matter your age or your physical limitation, we are the caring store, waiting to serve you. It's time to experience independent living. Visit us today.
This July, the world turns to Jamaica
for the Caribbean Investment Forum, the region's premier investment event.
From July 29 to 31, the Montego Bay Convention Center comes alive
with global thought leaders, exclusive investment opportunities, high-impact deal-making sessions.
Are you ready to invest in the Caribbean's future? Book now at CaribbeanInvestmentForum.com.
Let's shape a smart, green, connected Caribbean. July 29 to 31, Montego Bay. Powered by Caribbean Export, Government of Jamaica, Jampro, EU, CARICOM, Republic Bank.
Well, my graphics maker got it more precise than I did. I've been saying drought. My graphics maker says dry spell, which is more precise than drought, even though drought is not wrong. But in terms of an extreme description, perhaps it is not fair to say drought just yet, but it is very precise to say dry spell. All right, let's cut to the chase. I'm going to speak now with Garth Jackson. He's the acting president of the NWC. Good evening, Garth.
Good evening, sir. Good evening to you, and good evening to your audience.
Thank you very much. Peter Clark also with me. He's the managing director of the Water Resources Authority. Good evening, Peter.
Hey, good evening. Good evening.
All right, let me start with you. You're in studio. Tell my viewers what role the water resources plays overall, but especially in times when the dry spell is biting.
Well, overall, we manage water resources. As the name says, we are the Water Resources Authority. So for certain, whenever anybody wants to abstract water from the ground, from the aquifers through wells, they must get a license to do this, and we are we're the authority that issue license. We determine the balance of the water, how much you can actually get. We don't want your well to interfere with another well, to draw water away from another well, that sort of thing. So we do have the science to calculate that balance. And even to drill a well, you need a permit. And anybody who wants to drill a well needs a permit. With regards to surface water, the abstractors for surface water who are using it for large domestic purposes like the NWC, commercial purposes, they also have to get a license, and even springs. If you have for domestic users who have under half acre who have water, like say a spring or a stream running through their property, they can access without a license for their own domestic purposes. But if they put in a chicken coop that has 1,000 chickens and 2,000 heads of cabbage, I don't think they're going to be eating all of that. They are not going commercial, so that would be a different story. But that's what it is. In terms of how we would respond to, in terms of our involvement with what is happening now with a dry spell, for instance. What it means is that your prime players, your prime provider, like the National Water Commission, they are looking, as you heard in your blurb, that they're looking to resuscitate some wells and so on. So they would have had to have licenses in place to bring those wells back into service and so on. So that is one of the ways. Another way is that in the larger plans, for instance, to build out larger supplies. There's the plan to build a content water supply to bring water into Kingston to, in a couple of years, alleviate a lot of the problems. We would have had to basically negotiate with who already had water rights along the Rio Cobre so that enough water would then be available. Somebody would have to give up some rights. In this case, it was the National Irrigation Commission, and they gave up some of their water rights so that the NWC could get that 15 million gallons to come into, to bring into, in the future, to bring into Kingston. So we're a part of all of that.
All right. Garth Jackson, it is imprecise to say island-wide drought, but it's not far from the situation, but more precise to say a dry spell. How do you intend to manage the supply that is in the main catchments and storage areas in the corporate area and other parts of the island to tide us over until the rains come?
Well, you're quite correct there, that I think that we're in the dry summer months. Every year we have dry summer months, and every year we have the constraints on the production or the output from our production sources. Currently, of our 450 production sources, about 44 of them are reporting in at under the optimal capacity levels. And so we have put in place measures to ensure that we can continue throughout the next few months when the dry period will continue. So our streams, our springs, our small rivers are those which have been affected, largely affected. The groundwater has been relatively stable, and our the output from our larger raw water impoundments has been stable. Now, however, the levels of those raw water impoundments have fallen, and as I think you might have pointed out earlier, they are now below 50% of the capacity, of the design capacity of those reservoirs. So what we're doing a number of things. For the smaller rural communities, we have actually ensuring that the systems are as efficient as possible, meaning that the intake channels leading to the pumping stations, that we ensure that those are clean, that those are not losing water, either infiltrating or going out otherwise. So that would deal with a lot of our rural systems. In terms of the larger systems and the larger populated areas, Kingston and St. Andrew, for instance, we have, as Peter pointed out, we have recommissioned the Beverly Hills well, we have recommissioned the Cavaliers well, and we have recommissioned the Up Park Camp well, and that would add about 2 million gallons. So we're adding as abstraction from groundwater because of the reduction in the surface water inflows. The impoundments, as I said, they're below 50%, and so we have to do some modulation of supplies from those the treatment plants which support those impoundments. And what that means is that we're going to be controlling the pressure, we're going to be controlling the flows, and it will see eventually a reduction in the 24-hour service which we provide in our urban communities. We have added, we have reconstructed really a 1.5 million gallon storage tank, secondary storage tank at Hope, which will allow us to improve our operational flexibility. So we'll have the opportunities to be able to store more water and to release water at the appropriate times.
Importantly, Mr. President, importantly, someone will say, well, if the NWC is pressing more sources into service and taking from sources that they aren't taking from now, how soon will we be subject to water restrictions, given that you're adding to what is already there, maybe giving you more room to play with in terms of getting drastic with the restrictions?
All right. Well, we will be implementing the water restrictions come next week. The reality is that our caution level, the level which we feel comfortable, is 65%, and we're below that. So we are now introducing these contingency measures, these restrictions, as you say, in order to ensure that we can ensure that everybody gets some water, or sufficient water, every day for the next few months.
All right, hold the point there, Garth Jackson. Coming back to you and Peter Clark after this break. This is Lead Story here on CVM TV, talking about the management of the water resources right now in this dry spell, which is not expected to break until around about October, more than 70 days from now.
Paving the way to becoming a republic or future or choice. The time by the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs is
6:45.
Getting the keys to your own home is a feeling many cannot describe. It's a moment we all hope for and a dream that all Jamaicans have. The new social housing program is the difference between a dream and reality. The government, through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, is building hope, one home at a time.
Hey Joe, what's up?
I really think you should look into adding Island Next Unlimited Internet as a reliable backup for your home and office. We can come over and we'll talk more.
How fast can you get?
That fast.
But how fast is Island Next broadband? Fast enough people business fast?
Nope.
Fast enough prayer fast?
Nope.
How about fiber fast?
But not that kind of fiber. They use fast broadband to provide reliability.
Experience the lightning fast wireless broadband and reliable.
Back with us here on Lead Story, talking about water resources, the management thereof. The NWC says effective next week they'll publish in the media schedules for water restrictions in various communities as they do their utmost at this stage to manage the water resources. They're not waiting until the storage levels at the main storage facilities reach 30 and 20% to start managing. They're managing now, even though they're a little bit behind where their, in my phrasing, alarm level is. They say they're a little bit below that, but they are putting in the measures now to ensure that we have enough to take us through until when the rains come. I have Peter Clark with me. He's Managing Director of the Water Resources Authority, the WRA, and Garth Jackson is Acting President of the National Water Commission. I've always wanted to ask Peter, surface water storage is one thing, and when you go up into the hills, you go up into Irish Town or other parts of the corporate area, even when I went up in Smoky Vale driving down, you can look over and you see glistening in the background the Mona Reservoir. That's the surface water storage. How extensive is Jamaica's underground water storage, and is that really the key player when it comes to the dry spell to access the commodity to send to customers?
It is one of the key players, and you ask, to give you an idea of what the volume is, think of all the rivers that we have in Jamaica that you're so familiar with. Rio Grande, Rio Cobre,
Rio Mino,
Black River. Add them all up and add up all of that water that's flowing from them daily for a year. Think of it, that's a massive volume of water right there. And there's 6 times that amount, 5 to 6 times that amount of water available per year.
In groundwater?
In groundwater. Of course, groundwater isn't just sitting right there. You have to drill wells, you have to put in pumps. And in some instances, some groundwater has been contaminated, groundwater that has been in some of the bauxite areas where we had the Redmud Lakes and so on, there's been some contamination, some with, sugar enterprises and so on. But generally speaking, your groundwater is your real proper water. When the Water Commission abstracts groundwater and pumps it out to the community, they do chlorinate it. But most of that chlorination, most of the reason for that chlorination is not necessarily to kill anything really. It is as a prophylactic, so that if there's a breach in their system, there's a bit of chlorine there that will allow for the water to still be safe. But generally speaking, your groundwater that is not contaminated by anything it's your best water, because you don't have the surface runoff of fertilizers and all of these other things.
All kind of detritus to muddy the water, literally. Garth Jackson, in terms of your restriction schedule, the biggest headache the NWC has, and I would know because as a forward-facing media man, I get the calls daily, people cursing, you know, why is it that I've not had water for 2 days, but that community, which is just across the fence, they've had some supply daily. This is one of the things that you struggle to get right and precise and to give everybody a sense that they're getting a fair shake and that they're not disadvantaged relative to someone else. Is the alignment of that distribution schedule something you're confident that will work well this time around?
We're very confident of our regulation schedule. The challenges relate more to how the network is set up. So in order for one area to get served, you're going to have to, you may have to ensure that another area gets more than 12 hours a day or more than what another section of the network gets. So you have these little things you have to play around with in order to get it right. But I think that over the last 5 or so years, we have introduced a number of controls in our system, in our distribution and secondary transmission system, which allows us to be able to monitor and to be able to control the flows in the system. So yes, somebody may be getting water a little bit longer than somebody else, but that is in order that someone else will get sufficient water.
Yeah. And of course, your residents in rural Jamaica often lament the fact of news items concerning pumps being down, especially during drought. And they say, well, you know, we are so unfortunate that we've not had the commodity. And then when the commodity is ready to come to us, we hear that there are pumping difficulties which are preventing us from getting it as per the schedule. Insofar as that very important aspect, and it's a never-ending thing to repair the infrastructure and the equipment across the island, is the NWC satisfied that it has the integrity of infrastructure in place to serve customers in rural Jamaica especially?
Well, we're working continuously to improve our level of service to our customers. We do have challenges with, and not just with the mechanical aspects of the pumps, but also the electrical supply to the pumps. Quite often you have single phases or you have outages which prevent us from being able to operate even when our pumps are down. There are also issues we can have with the actual treatment facility, whether it may be a borehole, a well borehole, or it may be the run-of-the-river plants. So there are those other challenges. Now, what we have been able to do over the last few years is actually a strategic replacement of our pumping capacity, our pumping facilities island-wide. Right now, we're into a process of procuring quite a number of pumps, close to over 50 pumps we're procuring currently in order to ensure that we not only have pumps which are operating at their most efficient, but that also they are actually pumping into a network which will see the broader network being supplied as opposed to over pumping or under pumping because of where you live or whatever it is. So we're actually reconfiguring the networks to ensure that the pump sizes match the operating regimes, and also the efficiency. We have just completed some work at our Aguataville plant out in St. Mary, and that has seen a reduction of 70% in our energy consumption. And those pumps are now operating fairly effectively. Yeah. So we have been doing quite a bit of work to provide that. But there's still a lot of work that we need to do. And that is that's a challenge we have. We have the strategic plan, we need the resources, and we need the time to get it done.
Yes, indeed. I can tell you, Peter, that a journalist will tell you that their inbox, their email inbox, especially at this time of year, the NWC dominates. They send press releases. It's like a factory that Garth Jackson has up there. It's just constant telling you about this, that. So you can't fault them on communicating with their problems interrupting supply. I want to ask you though, are there instances where the Water Resources Authority says no to a request to drill wells or to access groundwater, given, well, I don't even want to speculate on the reason, but are there instances where you say to the NWC, no, we don't think you need to access this resource at this time?
Yes, and not just to the NWC. That's a very good question. Right now, in all of South St. Catherine, along the southern basin of the Rio Cobra, no new wells have been drilled in that area for over 20 years.
Why?
Regardless of who you are, because as I said, we calculate those balances. And based on the calculations right now, you can't take any more water. Your X would be greater than your Y, and you would not, your storage would deplete. It's as simple as that. So there's what we call a moratorium on any new wells, any new abstraction from that area. The Water Commission would love to drill a couple more wells out there, for sure, and others, farmers and everybody. But right now, that is what it is. So we have said no. And not just there. There are other instances where you would have said, we would have rejected an application based on the science and based on science and calculations, the math and everything of it, that we would say that no, you cannot have that abstraction.
And in my layman's understanding of what you're saying that one of your primary roles is to maintain equilibrium, and so this equilibrium, by virtue of drilling wells, you can't countenance that.
Right. And for instance, not just even with wells, with rivers, for instance, you can't. No one is allowed to abstract all of a river. You have to maintain an environmental flow. So as much as the Water Commission is taking it from the Yalas River, for instance, bringing it into Kingston, some amount of flow always has to be there. The rear corporates to see all of them. So nobody is allowed to take all of the water because the environmental flow has to be maintained.
Excellent. Garth Jackson, I have a few seconds left just to give you the final word. What would you want to say to Jamaicans at this time, know that you are poised to start imposing water restrictions on them?
Well, there are a number of things we have to say. Just to back up what Peter said about the over abstraction. That is something we have to be mindful of, and that is why we have our non-revenue water, so that we can actually ensure that all of what we are producing is actually going to usefulness. Now, what we would like to say to our partners, our consumers, our customers, is that we want to encourage you to conserve your use of water. We want you to encourage you to reduce the level of wastage. We want to